Hi everybody. Before we get to this week's episode, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Action for Children UK, who are a wonderful charity. Once again, they're running their Secret Santa Christmas campaign, and they provide young children with hot meals, presents and safe places to sleep all year. But in particular Christmas, they're doing a big fundraiser. And as we did last year, we're giving 100% of our December Patreon contributions to this charity. So if you sign up to our Patreon at patreon.com/theCinemile before the end of November, your fee in December will all go to Action for Children, and you will also get access to dozens of retro movie reviews and TV reviews. And you can always unsubscribe before the end of December, and no hard feelings. It means you get loads of extra podcasts for the month and your money goes to charity. So it's a win-win. So head to patreon.com/theCinemile to check that out and subscribe. And also we want to welcome 3 of our new Patreons this month. So hello to Matt, Nick and Tim Hopkin. Thank you guys so much for subscribing, and your money in December will go to Action for Children. And one quick apology for the audio quality of this episode. Turns out we do really good audio when we're walking home from the cinema. When we are at home in an echoey living room, it's not so good. So apologies, and hopefully we'll actually be back at the cinema very soon. Bye.
Hi, it's Dave here. This is my wife, Kathy.
Hello.
This is The Cinemile, the podcast where we used to walk home from the movies, but now we're in lockdown, so we sit here and watch movies.
And you know, everyone was talking about this movie 2 months ago when it came out.
Yes, and we have our finger on the pulse. Guys, right, we have 2 kids. It's so hard to keep on top of all these things to watch. But one of the benefits of not having to walk home from the movies is that we don't need to be in person with somebody. So we can dial into Ireland. Ireland, are you there? Eurovision style.
Hello?
Can you tally the points, please, for this movie?
Yes, here are the results of the Cork jury.
It's returning mother, my mother, Linda, and Granny, Linda, of the podcast. Hello, Mom.
Hey.
Hello, Granny Linda of the podcast.
Hello, Cinemilers. What a pleasure. What a pleasure to be on a virtual couch with you.
We're so happy to have you back. We were obviously with you during the summer when we watched The Vast of Night together on Amazon Prime.
Oh wow, I remember.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. I would never have.
Movie.
I would never have recalled that spontaneously, but yes, the vast of night.
And here we are. And we wanted to have Mom on this podcast, A, to hang out with her, but B, because Mom has just done a hyper lockdown binge of every episode of West Wing. Blanked for a second.
Yeah, The West Wing by Aaron Sorkin, who has written and directed this movie, The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Mom, how long did it take you to watch?
Chicago.
How long did it take you to watch all of this? Or to watch all of West Wing?
I don't know exactly, but we're talking weeks, not months. And there were 7 seasons, and I absolutely loved it.
And this is back in the days where there were like 24 episodes per every season.
Oh yeah,
right?
24 episodes per season, and pure escapism. And it was like just interesting watching it coming up to the election going on in the States, and it was like pure escapist fantasy, you know, describing a White House and a president that has morals and standards and integrity.
Where there's like, you know, philosophical debate about moral issues.
But not just the president, because it's a whole, you know, it's about a whole system that seemed to have integrity. So, I love a bit of escapism.
And we watched over the summer, actually with Dave's mom, funnily, when we were in Ireland, we watched An American President.
The American President?
The American President?
Yeah, which Aaron Sorkin also wrote, in which Michael Douglas is the president.
And it's like it's kind of like a light pilot of The West Wing, to the point...
a backdoor pilot.
The point where Martin Sheen is actually in it as like the chief of staff.
Yeah.
I watched that either with you or just after I listened to your podcast, because that's what kicked off.
You didn't listen to our podcast, Mom. We never did one. We actually told you in real life that you should watch it.
You're blurring the conversations which we have on this podcast and in real life.
I was like, Mom, you like this.
And I did. And I kept going and I watched the whole thing. So yeah.
It's a good movie. And also really holds up, worth a revisit for anyone who hasn't seen it.
It's like West Wing if it was a rom-com.
But I think I know we're not here to talk about West Wing. But West Wing, I thought, held up, given that it's relatively old. I think it was still relevant.
Lots of people consider it like the best TV show ever made.
Yeah.
I actually only ever saw a few episodes of The West Wing, which are quite light, but never really got into. And then I have, however, watched every episode of Newsroom, which is Aaron Sorkin's other big show. Newsroom.
Well, for getting Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
Yeah, but Newsroom ran for longer, I think.
Yeah, that only got one season.
Newsroom was a show set in a newsroom with all the lofty ideas that were in The West Wing, but done very extravagantly and very over the top in my mind. So I started watching Newsroom because I liked it, I wanted to watch it, and by the end I would watch Newsroom like screaming at the TV and like hating it and like following the hashtags on Twitter to see like all the awful things people are saying about it and like agreeing with them. But I do like the bits of West Wing I've seen, and I did like that American President movie, so I don't quite know how I feel about Aaron Sorkin coming into this, but I feel like he's got a very distinctive style, which is where he like loves lots of talk. He loves people walking and talking.
The walk and talk, that was extraordinarily well done. Not just his directing, but the whole acting. I was looking at these actors walking and talking, and it's not easy.
No,
and it's not easy to multitask.
And they learn so much dialogue.
The thing, I think you're right, Kelly. I agree with you. Aaron Sorkin's got a very like particular brand, and it often straddles the line between it is undeniably like earnest and sincere. I find his writing, and like hopeful and optimistic in the face of adversity, which I like and admire, and I sort of have similar points of views to him as a person, so I kind of align to that. But it often goes over the line into just cheeseball schmaltz.
Oh, like Newsroom was out of control. Like, Mom, you have to watch it now and compare it to West Wing. It'd be so funny. But listen, we can't be talking about Aaron Sorkin's TV shows all day here.
All right, well, let's talk about this movie. I don't know anything about this movie. I don't know who the Chicago 7 are. I know that they had a trial. Yeah. I guess it's set in Chicago.
Never heard of them. Mom, have you heard of the trial?
Well, I think the trial was kind of given away in the title of the movie. It's the trial of the Chicago 7. No, I mean, I think my memory is something to do with the 60s and Vietnam and protests, but I don't know anything about it, and I deliberately didn't look up, so I'll be happily surprised.
Yeah, it's fun I like these kind of movies where you get a slice of a particular slice of history that you may not have been familiar with, and then it kind of goes laser deep.
Well, Dave, you'll have to wait till we watch the movie.
But I imagine that's what it's going to be. I just want this to be just about this trial.
Well, I think that it will be, judging by the title for a show.
I wonder how many are going to be on trial.
Good question. And where are they based?
Okay, right. We're going to go and watch it, and then we're going to reconvene back online. So, Mom, we'll see you back as soon as the movie's over.
Okay, enjoy.
Okay, bye.
Are the people ready to make opening arguments?
At the defense table, Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, Dave Dellinger, Rennie Davis, Lee Weiner, John Freund, Tom Hayden, and Bobby Seale.
These defendants had a plan, and the plan was to incite a riot.
I call this portion of the trial with friends like these.
My trial's begun without my lawyer.
The court assumes you are being represented by the Black Panther sitting behind you.
The riots were started by the Chicago Police Department.
Sustained.
Nobody objected.
Jurors 6 and 11, they're with us. Juror number 6 and juror number 11, you're dismissed from this jury.
Can you tell us why?
Because this is my courtroom.
We've dealt with jury tampering, wiretapping, a defendant that was literally gagged.
Get your hands off me!
You're the first to suggest that I have discriminated against a black man.
Then let the record show that I'm the second.
When we walked in here this morning, they were chanting that the whole world is watching.
If we leave here without saying anything about why we came in the first place, it'll be heartbreaking.
Well, last summer, why did you come to the convention?
To end the war.
We're giving them exactly what they want, a stage and an audience.
Yeah, you really think there's going to be a big audience?
Here This is what revolution looks like, real revolution. We may have to hurt somebody's feelings.
Is this prosecution politically motivated?
I'm tired of hearing you.
It would be impossible for me to care any less what you are tired of.
Here I am! There will be order!
We have to find some courage now.
How much is it worth to you? What's your price?
To call off the revolution?
my life.
Open your eyes, 'cause a new day is dawning.
Hi, we're back. We watched the trial of the Chicago 7, but there were 8 of them.
Oh, spoiler street.
So
Okay.
for anyone who hasn't listened before, we'll talk about the movie kind of in general terms, without any spoilers, and then when we're like doing our real podcast, we walk to spoiler street, but here we go to spoiler sofa. Okay? So Mom, what?
Okay, got it.
Mom,
Okay.
Okay, so do I have to get off my sofa?
No,
and
you
go
can stay on
somewhere
your
else,
sofa.
or can
Go
I
to
stay on my
spoiler
sofa?
Yeah. Designate one of your sofas, please.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It delivered everything I liked from a Sorkin movie, and yeah, just my general overall impression was I was really impressed with the way it was put together and with the acting. I mean, there are some surprise performances in there for me. The two main ones.
Sacha Baron Cohen
yes,
and Eddie Redmayne.
And
probably.
Eddie Redmayne. I don't normally like Eddie. I mean, I loved him singing in Les Miserables, but normally I find him too OTT.
Mom, do you remember when we went to see Fantastic Beasts and you called him Eddie Sideface?
That's
all I could think about watching the movie.
I was exactly remembering the very exact podcast, and this is the only movie I've seen him where he's not looking all side-faced at the camera. He looks like a normal person, and he's very... Yeah,
so he's been acting this whole time, is what you're saying?
This is the first time he's not delivered a performance entirely in profile. Like, Jake's never seen Fantastic Beasts, but like, it's weird what he does in that movie.
Oh,
like.
it's weird. So
I mean, they're very bad movies for lots of reasons. Eddie Redmayne's not the worst of the offenders.
I actually liked that first movie. I didn't see the second one.
Second one is
Grindelwald
diabolical. Made much worse by Johnny Depp's performance, but Eddie Sideface didn't help.
Eddie Side. But anyway, he was very understated and good, because he was playing a character that wasn't, especially likable, because he was a bit of a suck up. But no, and Sacha, it's the middle name I can never. Yeah, I thought he was extraordinarily good. Really good. And the guy who was his sidekick, who was from that other show,
Succession.
Yeah, he was brilliant in his role. So, yeah, like without going into too many specifics, overall I found it a good watch. I thought, even though it was set in the 60s, it had a contemporary feel. The themes felt contemporary. So I thought it was well meshed between like Woodstock style footage and modern day issues. And yes, it had a little bit of that kind of fairy tale feel, but yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved that. I loved how he blended real world protest footage with what they shot themselves. It really just like that can be very overdone or overblown or heavy handed, but it felt like it was cut in a really interesting way, this movie. And a lot of the way that they tell the story, like the structure of what is revealed over what they're on trial for, is told through court testimonials, but also them like Sacha Baron Cohen at a stand-up club regaling an audience with what happened. So you get these sort of plus the actual footage of what happened. So you get this all these varying sort of perspectives on the same thing, and they're all meshed together. And I thought that can be a very cluttered or confusing way to tell a story. I thought it worked really effectively.
It's actually
sorry, go on.
It's like a technique that's used in writing: show, don't tell. So nobody ever told us what had happened, but it all got like shown through various clips, flashbacks, and as you said, the stand-up. So it was very well. And what I felt with that is that we the audience were credited with some intelligence, because we weren't given a lot of stuff wasn't filled in for us, and we just had to intuit it or know it from what we were given, and I liked that.
Exactly. You don't really get introduced to any of these characters. You get a very sort of effective, I thought, and quick montage at the beginning. But then you're kind of just straight into the trial without knowing what they're on trial for, even. But I think we sort of said at the front of the show that Aaron Sorkin can be a bit sort of marmitey. And I think he did skirt the line a few times for me in this movie. Particularly, let's talk about in Spoiler Street, a couple of moments where I was like, oh dear, no, this is too much. But overall, I'm with you. I thought it was really, really great piece of work. He's whatever about him, he's an amazing screenwriter. He's got a beautiful way with words. All of the characters felt like they had their own voices. The performances were excellent. And what a cast. This cast, and just all these surprise awesome actors just kept popping out of the blue. Every 2 seconds it was like, I won't even say who they are because they may be sort of, there were fun surprises in themselves, so we'll talk about that in Spoiler Street. But yeah, I was bought into this 100% from the beginning. I was invested in it. I felt like it like you said, Linda, it's got like, just feel very contemporary, particularly, without talking too much about the subject of the movie. It's about anti-war protesters clashing with the police, and then this sort of friction between a right-wing institution and what is perceived as the radical left. And all of that is the melting pot that is happening in America and has been happening, well, since 1968, but particularly has been playing out over the past year with the Black Lives Matter movement in particular. So I think these are the kind of movies I really appreciate, that you feel like you're being educated on a particular topic that I knew nothing about. I knew nothing about these people or this trial. So I found that really interesting. It was also entertaining for the most. It was very well put together, but it was also entertaining. It was also quite frustrating. Like, I felt so frustrated at the injustice of this whole thing. So I was invested. And also, yeah, it takes away, you walk away from it with a bit of a broader lens on what's happening today. And I think that for me are the best kind of movies. So I thought it was excellent. I was really impressed.
I thought, like, at the beginning, I thought the opening montage was, like, so punchy and really set the scene for the trial, like you guys said, and, like, I was really enjoying the performances, even Eddie Sideface, who I tend to take issue with. But as it went on, I felt like it dragged, like, I felt like it was a little bit too long, and I was really fascinated by the subject matter, right? It's fascinating, these anti-Vietnam protesters, but how they all kind of come from, you've got like
anti-Vietnam War protesters.
Anti-Vietnam War specifically. Like, you've got people who are from kind of the academic, like, more political people like Eddie Redmayne, and then you have like the Black Panthers, the guy Bobby, who was played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen, who's amazing, and then you have like the hippie played by Sacha Baron Cohen, who was like scene-stealingly incredible. I never knew he was that good an actor. So I found that all really interesting. And then obviously, as Dave mentioned, like, in light of the continued violence in the States, in particular, how armed and ready the police are over there, and, you know, frankly, murder innocent people. We know that happens over there, and that resulted in like mass protest globally this summer of Black Lives Matter. And I felt like watching it with all of that knowledge from what was happening this summer and has been happening in America for a long time made me very angry as a viewer, angry about the American police and what we were being shown when we were watching those violent scenes.
Yeah.
And I think Aaron Sorkin did that stuff really well, but I would have liked to have heard more about the Black Panthers. I felt like I know that's more incidental because in the end he wasn't actually one of the Chicago 7, so I appreciate why we didn't see as much of him, but I was really interested in that and would have liked to see more from him. And his treatment was like, we were like shouting at the TV about how that character Bobby, who was like the head of the Black Panthers, was being treated in the courtroom. Like, we were sickened watching it. So I get really angry, and I think Aaron Sorkin's really good at that, like rising your emotions really high. But so then that stuff aside, about the film itself, I felt like it just got way too Aaron Sorkin for me by the end. Like, I was literally like to Dave, I cannot effing watch this movie. It's like nauseating. And I really got annoyed at how much Eddie Redmayne's character was like the focal point. Like, I don't understand why he was the focal point. I got really bored of watching him. And then I, towards the end, was like, oh, it's because he's like a Martin Sheen or a Michael Douglas. Like, he's what Aaron Sorkin loves, which is this like eloquent, liberal, like educated white man, isn't he? Like, isn't that what Aaron Sorkin loves? And I just got like just bored of watching it. But we'll go into more in spoiler street. And also, and I know it's true to life, so like you cannot fault them that all the players involved were men, right? So Aaron Sorkin was like trying to flesh out some female characters, but how he did it was so bad that I like almost wish he hadn't done it at all.
You mean the secretary at the conspiracy?
There's basically three women in it. There's a secretary, there's an undercover spy who like uses her wily ways, and then there's another woman who's like basically a victim to men. And I just thought like, oh god, I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it.
But I think that would have been representative of the times, because even though it felt contemporary, it's not. This was the 60s, and that would have been reflective of that. And Eddie,
I kept forgetting it was the 60s actually.
It was the 60s.
Then you'd remember.
I think that's what's happening. And so Eddie's character wouldn't have just been what Sorkin loves, but what the American public loved. And so at the time, he would, I imagine, have got all the press attention, and they would have been playing on that in their defence to present the college white boy. So I think that fit with it. But just one thing I want to throw in there, I wasn't all that engaged with the backstories and the personalities of the seven, but I was fascinated with the legal system and the corruption of judges.
Oh my god, the judge!
Because that's
Frank Langella is the actor.
He was amazing.
He was extraordinary.
Brilliant performance of a very, very corrupt man. But then I've just finished watching the latest season of The Good Fight, which we know I love, but it's largely focusing in this whole season on the corruption of judges, and it's profoundly eye-opening. And so that was the bit that fascinated me. I love to watch the courtroom play out.
And again, that was very triggering almost, like knowing what's happened in America with the Supreme Court and how like the Republicans have rushed someone in before Trump leaves. Again, it was like the judicial system and all that stuff on display. It like, and we're not even American. But watching and what I know about the American justice system, like it frightens me, and you know, I was frightened watching the movie because I feel like yes, it was set in 1969, but that shit could be going on and is going on today, and it was very stressful for me to watch it, and I it was very stressful, and overall it's too close to the bone for me, and it was interesting after we watched it, Dave and I, before we came back onto You Mum, Dave was saying he felt it struck an optimistic tone about human spirit, and I was saying no, to me it was so depressing that like they spent like over 150 days on like a sham trial to persecute people who were, just trying to like exercise their like civic right to protest, and it was just too close to the bone for me.
Yes,
the year that's in it.
I agree. I was not at all saying. I'm not saying that that's not depressing. That's the whole point of the movie. It's an incredibly frustrating experience.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we'll talk about it in spoilers. But the other thing which struck me watching it this week was this movie takes place. This isn't a spoiler, but it kicks off because of an incoming attorney general who is politically motivated and has the ear of the president, so the incoming president Nixon at the time. And a lot of this movie centres around how this is a political trial, right? And there's the tension between Sacha Baron Cohen and Eddie Redmayne about there being such a thing as a political trial. And this happened in the same week that the actual Attorney General, Anthony Barr, flew in the face of evidence and advice, and instructed the FBI and judges to investigate mass voter fraud in the current US election.
Yeah, non-existent
because
voter fraud.
he's a good mate of Donald Trump. So it felt like
it's too close to the bone. That's what I mean.
It's almost exactly the same.
Yeah,
very close to the bone. But I would caution you to not just think it's happening in the States. There's huge corruption and drama going on this week in the UK, and also in Ireland we have shenanigans.
Oh yeah, and trust me, I'm not saying like literally as we speak. Last night Dominic Cummings was given the arse over here in the UK, an unelected person who was effectively running the country. So I'm not in any way saying the UK is any better. It's just with what we've been watching in America and then watching this movie, I just like
it's very real. So I think that's what the movie pulled off for me. They're very real issues. They're very dark issues. It's bigotry, it's corruption, it's set up, but it had a lot of lightness and humor and great dialogue and great spirit. And like the two lads who we don't know who they were because they were the token, number 6 and number 7, who said like it was an it was an honor to be even included in the trial.
They said it was like being nominated for the Oscars.
Yes, yeah.
That was funny. There was, you're right, like there was definitely lightness of touch to it and like humor, and I do think that is something Aaron Sorkin's really good at.
But I stick to my what I said to you last night after the movie. I do think he's an optimistic person, and Aaron Sorkin is to the detriment of sort of the he's so laughably like it's sincere and earnest. Some of it was laughable. Like. Yeah,
we should go to spoilers over.
Right. Why don't we flick over to spoilers? But I personally would highly recommend this movie, and it's on Netflix. It's easy to access. I think it's well worth a watch.
When I was watching it, at some point during it, I had this thought to myself, this is absolutely brilliant. This is the best movie I've seen all year. Now, obviously, afterwards, in the come down, I'm not standing over that, but that was my experience. At one point, in one of those like banters, I was absolutely blown away with how brilliant it was. And also, because I have a sort of an interest in acting too, like just really watching the acting and how on game those actors were. Those performances were fantastic. They were fantastically authentic. So
it was almost like
there's no weak link in this.
The guy Jeremy Strong, who like we're obsessed with in Succession. I appreciate he's playing a real person, and I'm sure he was doing a good impression. But I don't know, I was slightly disappointed. Like I felt like he was the weaker.
He was
of
a
them,
bit. He's the comic relief,
but he wasn't given much to do.
Yeah.
Like for me, 100% the standouts were Sacha Baron Cohen and Yahya Abdul-Mateen. They're like unbelievable. Eddie Redmayne
and Frank Langella.
And
Mark Rylance.
No, I just thought Mark Rylance was given nothing to do.
Oh no,
he did nothing.
Mark Rylance barely has to do anything because he just brings integrity with him. Like but you just hire him and he just shows up and you're like,
lazy, like
I'm comfortable with this.
Like, and I think having Eddie Redmayne as the clean cut whatever friend of Bobby Kennedy was like.
Can we just talk about the fact that Eddie Redmayne is 38 years old and was playing a college student?
Yes, I noticed that, but he still has a young look. But my take on the defense lawyer, he didn't have a lot to do, but there was so much going on. Like his facial expressions, his presence, I found him totally believable. He didn't have to be. He didn't have to be doing a lot to portray that character.
Can I talk about the thing that annoyed me the most?
Do, Kathy, tell us. Get it off your little chest there.
Wait, don't slag me, Dave, because I always get his name wrong. But Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh,
yay! Playing the prosecutor, right?
Yeah.
Who kind of has like, a secret heart of gold, and he's like this loving father, and he like has his doubts about it. That was annoying me so much that I actually went on and Googled afterwards, and apparently that's not what the prosecutor was like at all.
Oh, really?
It was such an Aaron. I was like, this is an Aaron Sorkin liberal invention. Like, this has to be like. And he's like, my God, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this. I was like, no.
But that's as a character, it worked.
Yeah, but he was the least believable. He was also the least believable for me. Now he didn't irritate me, but he was
No, he didn't. The actor didn't irritate me. He did a fine job. It's just that I knew. I was like, I've seen Newsroom enough to know it's a fake character from Newsroom. Okay, we're going to go to Spoiler Sofa now. So, for anyone who hasn't watched it, and I would say if you're in light of this summer, and if you're not feeling up to something like this, I don't know that I'd recommend it as a watch. And B, if you really can't stand Aaron Sorkin stuff, I would definitely not recommend it as a watch. But if you love a really good political drama court case, it's very well done. Like it's brilliantly executed, and like you said, Mom, the show don't tell. I love how we never just listened to a witness talk. We always watched the scene. Like I thought that was brilliant. Because it could have been very dull.
Are we on spoiler sofa now?
We are on spoiler sofa
now. 3, 2, oh, now, okay. I am. Because my big thing about that show don't tell, we didn't even get to hear the verdict. It was just in the wrap-up that we heard what their sentencing was.
Yeah.
And the sentencing was, I actually looked up what they were all sentenced as, and it was like slightly different things, and like 2 of them had been let off, and some of it was just for like contempt and all that, and then like they said at the end, like, that was one of the things that bothered me right at the end. It just very briefly gave us like what happened for people after the trial. That was it. And I thought, look, you've set up 8 characters for us. Like, tell us what all 8 of them did. Surely, like, that just felt like such a dud ending. Did you think so?
I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was a brilliant ending. It told us.
Really?
Yeah, I don't get what your
enough.
beef is.
I just thought, like,
What do you want? You want to know what the two?
I want to know what the Boy Scout leader did after this.
Yeah, we didn't get
like,
much
that
of
was
Dellinger. Was his
they
name?
set that Boy Scout leader up right as like the nice guy. Like it was absolutely hilarious. And his wife and son were there every day. I was like, send that child to school. They kept saying the court case lasted half a year, and the child was forced to sit there 8 hours a day
watching testimony.
Like just ludicrous. But I wanted to know what happened. Like, was he allowed back into the Boy Scouts? Also, the fact that like. I think what I was so frustrated
was he allowed back into the Boy Scouts?
Like basically
that's
the
your
whole,
problem with this movie.
I cannot believe like 150 plus days of like public money of everything that went on in this show trial, and then the whole thing just collapsed, and then no one ever followed up on it again. I was like, what are we watching? Like this is like.
But what you're describing is
teacup.
frustration and with the actual subject matter of the movie. That's what you're supposed to be feeling. That's the
point.
I
felt no sense of victory at the end. I just felt like, what the fuck was that?
Well, there was no victory.
Yeah.
No winners.
No.
The victory is the constructed moment, which I'd love to know if that actually happened with the reading out the 4,000 names, which is it just felt so finely constructed. Though I would not be surprised if it never happened.
I forgot to Google that actually
because it's such a movie moment, isn't it?
But that's what annoyed me, that it became not about the subject matter, but about Eddie Redmayne's character arc. The whole thing was building up to like, will Eddie Redmayne do what the judge wants him to do, or will he defy him? And I'm like, that's not interesting. He's been arrested for being a protester. We will work from the presumption that he will defy.
Well, for me, that is definitely the kind of arc. But the main theme of the movie is kind of because what's interesting is you're coming at it. You've all these varying different approaches to the same objective, right? So and the two that are particular loggerheads are.
Bobby,
Abby, Sacha Baron Cohen's character, and Tom, Eddie Redmayne's character. So
you mean at loggerheads with each other?
At loggerheads with each other, but they've got the same objective, and I think that's what's really interesting. And then the whole thing is, and it's again, this is where it got very cheeseball for me.
Oh my god, I couldn't cope with them fighting.
They sort of, but when they meet in the middle, that's where it got a bit cheeseball. When the bit where Sacha Baron Cohen says, "Wait, he doesn't." He forgets to say the word "our." He meant to say "our."
I did not
and then
know
he goes,
what was happening
just
there.
like when you said that line in your book, and he goes, "You've read my books? I've read all your books, man."
He said, "I've read every word you've ever written."
Yeah, and it's like, oh god. And then there's this like the heavens open, and like Eddie Redmayne realizes that maybe Sacha Baron Cohen actually is an intelligent guy, and then he says, "No, Abby should take the stand." I was just like, this is too movie for me. It's too movie magic.
But apparently the line
Aaron
that Abby
Sorkin.
said, Sacha Baron Cohen, when he said like, I've never been questioned or put on trial for my thoughts before. Apparently that's a real line. But like all the stuff with like the stuff that was just so sickening to watch with Bobby and the judge, and how like Bobby kept saying like, I have no representation, and the judge. And then that, that's actually true that they bound and gagged him as well.
God.
Like, that was just so.
That's horrific.
It was heartbreaking. It was horrific. It was an awful thing to behold, and
but luckily,
it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I'm glad to see it documented in a film like that, because it was so shocking, and I think I would have liked to seen a little bit more time spent on that. But I appreciate he wasn't one of the 7; he was the 8th, and then he got to go, and he should never have been there in the first place. But it was like that was a truly shocking moment, and I was pleased when Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character went up and objected and all that stuff.
Just like happened in real life.
Though I don't know if that's what happened in real life. I don't know. But maybe he would have, because it was actually nothing to do with their case. So like, why would you stand for that?
Well, I liked his line where it's like, this is it. You have somebody bound and gagged in an American court. It was just like, so it was absolutely horrific.
And they were using the Black Panther's name like to pretend that there was jury tampering when there wasn't. Like, so there was like so much shenanigans going on.
How good was the Michael Keaton bit, where Michael Keaton just shows up and says, "I'm your star witness," and then it's like just feels like this slam dunk moment, and then it's like again just bashing your head against the wall with this judge who will not allow this testimony to be heard by the jury. He was so up the arse of the government, it was ridiculous.
When he was like, my office found that the police started the riots, and then your mum was like, get out of my courtroom, basically. But apparently that's definitely true, that he didn't, like his statement wasn't allowed. But like at one point it annoyed me because Mark Rylance, the defense lawyer, said like, we need like a psychologist up in the stands because I don't think that judge is fit. But then like that fizzled out, and just watching it, and I appreciate we're talking about in the 60s, etc. But watching it as a viewer, I kept getting confused. I was like, why is this judge still the judge? Because they should have followed that through and showed us them trying to get rid of him or something, because they left that thread hanging, and it was so bizarre to watch.
That's got nothing to do with the 60s. There are people in positions of power today in every country that should not be there. No,
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they left a thread hanging for us as a viewer that they didn't fulfill. Oh, sure. They should never have had Mark Rylance saying that line, because I get hung up on things that I spent the entire movie waiting for the psychologist to show up and go, he's unfit.
You're nitpicking this movie so much. I don't get it. Like, you've got a beef. Your beef seems to be that you were depressed with the state of the world and you didn't want to be reminded of it.
No, that's not my beef. I actually think it's a really good movie.
It doesn't sound like it.
It's not beef. I just like have a lot of issues with like how
it is beef. It's seared pan-fried beef. I
just had a lot of issues with the subject matter. Obviously, it's very stressful, and then I just think there were certain things that Aaron Sorkin did that I didn't quite agree with, and that were like overly cheesy for me. But overall, I do think I think it's a really good movie.
I think I must be very shallow though, because I just enjoyed the ride. I didn't honestly think too deeply about any of it. I just
you're not shallow. Yeah, I just viewing it differently.
I just enjoyed the whole. I think I enjoyed the cinematic and the production value of it, and all of that. And of course, I mean, even in Ireland, we've got current scandals going on now. Supreme Court judges. It's none of it's simple. And yes, a lot of the threads were just left hanging there, as happens in life. Yeah, you know, threads are left hanging. But I guess overall, I don't think I learned much, but I certainly enjoyed a lot.
It's a good piece.
It
of
is, and it's like what makes something like The West Wing easier to watch is like it's fictional, and that's what made this very different for me watching, because it was like based on. It happened, and I just find that very stressful, and I always get caught up. I know when I'm watching adaptations, I get completely caught up on like, is this what happened? What's changed? Like, I know we'd have changed some elements. What's he changed? And I just get totally hung up on that, and I can't go like you were able to just embrace the movie. And I wish I could have.
I think you're right though. That's an important thing to remember with an Aaron Sorkin movie. It is he operates in a world of fiction. You know, he constructs as much as he grounds, particularly subject matter like this. They're grounded in reality, or they're sourced from reality. He constructs the world that we would want to live in. That's what I kind of see. It's this almost like this look at what like with The West Wing is like it's like a left wing fantasy, isn't it?
The Newsroom is like a joke.
It's like Star Trek.
Newsroom is like a punchline to a joke.
Yeah. Can we talk about? Sorry, if anyone hasn't seen, this is minor spoilers for Newsroom, whatever season this happens in. But I haven't even seen this episode. But there's a very famous thing that I've seen via YouTube of one of the characters being on an airplane, and I won't even say what happens.
But Mum, you look it up. Look up Newsroom airplane scene.
9/11. Look up Newsroom airplane 9/11 and watch that scene, and it is honestly one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen. It's completely lacking in self-awareness. I think that is the and I think this is his writing veers into that, but it can often be saved by a good performance.
Apparently he wrote it ages ago, which is interesting.
This movie.
I wonder.
Fair play to him, he really cast the role. Like Sacha Baron Cohen, I looked up the real guy he played, and he looks identical to him.
Oh wow!
It's unbelievable. Yeah, like they're really well cast.
I wonder what his actual goal was in making the movie, because that's interesting. What was he trying to achieve with it? That's not clear.
A good question.
Yeah, and it's from 1969. He wrote the script, from what I read, at least 10 years ago. I guess he took him a while to get it off the ground, but it's like is the point that like the Vietnam War was a bad idea, because like pretty much everyone agrees with that? Is the point that like is the point about police brutality, maybe? Like, I don't actually know. Or did he just find it a fascinating thing that he fancied recreating?
I would imagine the story of these people is quite endearing, or it can be positioned that way, and that's how he positions it. As in, like, they were facing insurmountable odds. Like, from the beginning, the odds are stacked against them. They have a judge who has already decided. They've They're in an environment and a country that's not really backing them. They've got the government against them, and the whole movie is experiencing their frustrations at these seemingly insurmountable odds. But while the outcome was them being convicted, it kind of is positioned as a victory in the end, and they made a political statement. So I think that kind of is an interesting story.
I find it reminds me, the way sometimes bizarre things are happening in your life or in somebody's life, and you say you couldn't make it up. Like, it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
So almost like this was a story where these people were just randomly thrown in together and put together as one court case, the 7 of them. And I'd say at the time you'd be reading that and saying you couldn't make this stuff up. So I think the idea was, this is a fascinating and bizarre travesty of justice, and wouldn't this make a great movie?
Yeah, like the stuff the judge was doing when he was like completely out of control of like gagging somebody, or like just contempt, like letting them say nothing. All the stuff the judge was doing, if that was in a fiction movie, you would be like, there's no way. But the fact that in this movie you were like, God, like I feel like that actually is what really happened. So that, it's really interesting. And it's funny because that actor, I normally love him so much, so I think that's part of the reason I was like, felt very like stressed by his performance.
Frank Langella?
Yeah, he's such a nice guy.
He let you down, Kathy.
He did leave me down. Yeah.
What's that one where he's in he's got dementia and gets a robot?
Robot and Frank.
Robot and Frank.
Oh, Robot and Frank.
It's a great movie.
I've seen that. That's lovely.
That's what I picture him as. So
no, I'm glad I hadn't remembered him in that. I just want to say a little, speak up on behalf of Eddie Sideface's character. I mean, I know he got a lot of attention, and I know there was that whole, was he going to? I didn't expect him to read out all those names, but I think his internal struggle was, he's coming from middle class white America. He would not have been comfortable with any of that. Like, the hippies were the hippies, but he would have been coming from that college place where it would have been a big effort for him to actually stand against the system.
Well, it was interesting that line early on in the movie when Bobby says to him, the Black Panther guy says to Eddie Sideface, you guys are all here because you're rebelling against your dads. Like, that's not why I'm here. Like, he's rebelling against institutional racism that he spent his whole life living against. And he said, and I'm rebelling against like a noose hanging off a tree. Like, he's like, we're coming from completely different realities.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, like how sad for Eddie that he's like so rich and like has this Ivy League education. He's like a pallbearer at Bobby Kennedy's funeral. Like, great that he went on to protest the war, and great that we found out later went into politics and stuff, but they're just from completely different, like, walk of life, if you say. It's like so different. So to me, his manufactured arc was like slightly like not very interesting for me, that he, in such a blatant farce of a trial, didn't go along with it. It was a farce. Like, of course, at that point, like, given the opportunity to speak, like, anyone would have been like, this is a joke.
I don't know, did you miss that, Kathy? Because he had the opportunity to stand up and sum up and show remorse. He had the opportunity to get them to change the outcome.
Sentence.
He did, and I thought it was interesting, because that would have been a very tempting one to take.
I just thought I didn't believe the judge anyway. So.
Okay, but that was what he was faced with. That. So I got to make this Sophie's choice. It was either give the judge what he wants or stand up for what he believed in, and I thought it worked. He worked for me, which I don't say lightly.
And I guess, and he finally, like, it was like his character arc was also for him to realise that Sacha Baron Cohen is right, and it's a political trial.
It is a political trial.
No such thing as a political trial.
It's a bit like there's a real through line throughout him and Sacha Baron Cohen are the two main sort of characters in all of this, and their conflict.
Yeah, they were so polarized that they came together.
And a lot of that is quite heavily signposted, but I'm fine with that. I thought it was like,
I don't mind that.
Really well told.
And it was fun watching Jeremy Strong's performance as like kind of stoner best mate. Like, he definitely was like the fun of the movie when he like fell in love with that FBI.
He got his heart broken.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him. But then we were like, who is she? She's so familiar. I googled her. She was in Succession with him, which immediately then threw me off. I was like, that's weird. I find it very strange when you're watching people on screen together who who you've seen in something else together. Like, that just always unnerves me. Because I'm like, there's so many actors in the world. Why are these same two actors opposite each other? Like, I never get it. But yeah, for me, the highlight was when Michael... Like, I was getting a bit annoyed at, like, how many, like, famous faces there were. I was, like, rolling my eyes. But then when Michael Keaton showed up, I was like, okay, this is amazing. Yeah. Love him. Like, because you just don't see him that often. And he... Like, I love when they're like, don't worry, you won't be compelled to do this. And we're here to, like, be witnesses. And he's like, no, I brought you to, like, let you know that I want to...
That was awesome.
That was awwn.
There's a lot of real, like, fist in the air moments.
And Eddie Redmayne's like, oh, you have to show courage. And I was like, oh, God, here we go. But he cut him off. But Mom, thank you so much for like coming as the West Wing expert.
Thanks for coming all this way.
Did you notice parallels, Mom? After your West Wing binge, was this like enough to tide you over, or do you need to go back and just rewatch the West Wing?
I think I should start at episode 1. I mean,
did you listen to the podcast I told you about, West Wing Weekly?
Yes, I just actually thought about that yesterday. I think the similarity is the long. They're not called soliloquies. The long monologues. And,
they basically are.
I mean, there was no walk and talk because it didn't really work for that, but it had that.
There was one in the lawyer's office.
There was one in the lawyer's office, but even though it was set in a courtroom, there was a sense of movement, so it wasn't dissimilar. Yeah. The talk was very fast, like that line learning and delivering for all of them. It wasn't dissimilar, but I don't think I would have looked at it and known straight away. But yeah, I did.
And do we think, like, I reckon Sacha Baron Cohen and Yahya Abdul-Mateen might get Oscar nominations because A, they're both brilliant, and B, there's been feck all movies out this year, so you may as well nominate two people
this is
from
true.
the same movie.
Yeah, I'd like to see them get
that.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was an extraordinary role for Sacha to play, like that whole switch from crazy comedy to it was funny, but it was a serious role too.
Yeah. And is it some month for him? Because was it in September as well, or when did he bring out
Borat 2?
Borat 2.
Yeah. Or we're close together.
Yeah, which we were kind of planning on watching, never got around to it. Now we really feel like we missed the boat. Like, that's definitely a flash, and like, you know, you watch it in those few weeks, or you probably don't bother watching it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be drawn
to
it. No, I wouldn't be interested. I didn't really like the Borat movies. They were.
Fair enough.
That's Mom's review. They were.
I prefer political fantasy.
Okay, Mom, please go off and watch Newsroom, right? And then
but how long is it? How many seasons is it? Is it a long watch?
Newsroom.
I think Newsroom is 3 seasons. Remember?
Okay,
Newsroom is infuriating. I got 3 episodes into the first season, and
the first season's the best.
Yeah. Oh God, really?
The best. Yeah.
Okay.
Mom, I miss you. Thank you so much.
I know,
for
it's lovely, and you know, we might all be together at Christmas. We might do some sort of walk around the park episode.
Well, hopefully, we're trying to think of usually we do a big end of year review on all the movies we've seen. This year we're
a short review.
So very short list. Like Bill and Ted 3 will end up in our top 5 by complete default. Right, thank you so much, Mom.
Thanks, Linda. If you want to follow us, or if you want to let us know what you thought of Trial of the Chicago 7, at The Cinemile on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or email us thecinemile@gmail.com. We always write back. And that's it. And it would be lovely if you could, if you liked this, subscribe to the podcast, go and leave us a review.
Yeah, and don't be cross at me if you love Aaron Sorkin, because I have said I think he's really good at what he does. So don't be cross at me.
And lastly, if you want more of this, we are struggling to get cinematic releases out, as you can tell, in this environment. But we have a load more episodes if you're hungry for more of these over on our Patreon feed at patreon.com/thecinemile. Where you can subscribe for $2 or $3 a month, and you get access to all our retro movie and TV reviews.
And they're themed, and actually every month one of our listeners picks the theme, and this month we're going to be watching movies about American presidents. So
actually well timed. And all of the money that we're getting in December is going to charity.
Action for Children. It's a wonderful charity. So anyone who subscribes up between now and the end of November, your money that comes out on the 1st of December all goes to Action for Children. You've access to everything in the back catalogue, which at this stage is about 30 movies and like way more than that in terms of TV reviews. And then you can unsubscribe before the end of December and you won't be charged again. Alright, okay. Bye, Mom. Love you.
Bye.
Bye, Linda.
Open your eyes, 'cause a new day is dawning. day is dawning.